Weaknesses. Address your goddamn weaknesses. This is something that I wish that I was told from an earlier age and I listened to that person. If you're too good or too strong to not do the things that you suck at, then you are an idiot. And that was me 5 years ago. For whatever reason, I thought I was too strong, too good, and there was no need for me to do the things that I wasn't good at or didn't enjoy. And at that time, 5 years ago, I'd been playing football my whole life. I'd been to university and I'd had many years in the gym already, but my lower body absolutely sucked. Couldn't squat, very, very rarely trained legs, and my belief at the time was I didn't need to do that because I play football 2 or 3 times a week and I get enough lower body training from playing football. And I was so wrong. This is a lie that many people tell themselves, and as soon as you can get to the point where you start to enjoy doing the things that you suck at, then everything changes. For me, back in the day, that was, funnily enough, this exercise that you're watching now was the exact turning point that made me start to enjoy the things that I sucked at. This is an ATG split squat, and it was during lockdown in 2020, which was the first time that I had ever come across or seen this exercise, and I tried it. And I remember doing it. I stacked 2 pallets up in the patio. I was doing it with my girlfriend, who could comfortably drop into it with no issues whatsoever. Never trained it in her life. So freaking annoying. And I was complete and utterly humbled. Ankle completely locked up and restricted, particularly on the right side. And that's happened from extremely tight calves and multiple ankle sprains and injuries on my right side. So my knee wasn't able to travel forward without my heel lifting. Getting my knee into those super fully flexed positions just felt horrible because I never spent time in that position. And then the biggest identification for myself was just how restricted and tight my hip flexors were, man. I'd never ever stretched my hip flexors. And why, I do not know. You look at the anatomy of the body, and if you look at the hip flexor muscles, 4 big muscle groups within the quadricep that run all the way from above the knee to up the thigh and actually around the pelvis and to the lower back. And when you think these muscles are responsible for sprinting, for bringing your leg up, for driving forward, and you wouldn't train them, and if they're extremely tight and extremely weak, that's not going to have an impact on how you run or perform or play your sport, then yeah, it's just something that we didn't address at the time. And then the other thing was just how restricted my body was one side compared to the other. Left side felt not too bad. As soon as I went on my right side, just complete and utterly different. And I never had really identified this before until I did this movement. This movement exposed everything for me, and there is no hiding. And it's one of the movements that I continue coming back to almost on a daily basis with tons of my clients that I work with in person and online. And the reason being, if you suck at this movement, you're probably going to find squatting very difficult because you don't have the dorsiflexion needed to get into a deep squat. If you find it really tight on your hips, you're more likely to have issues with your lower back, you're more likely to have issues with your knees, and you probably find squatting in general very uncomfortable. Okay, I use this exercise with 80-year-old clients. I get them started with their front leg elevated on a chair, and they use 2 hands to assist themselves. And the results have been insane over a long period, progressively getting more comfortable in these deeper ranges of motion. And not only are we training muscles here, we're training the connective tissues. So when we say connective tissues, I'm talking about ligaments, the tendons, all of the internal structures within the knee joint. We are lengthening them and we are strengthening them. And those adaptations to connective tissues will take much longer than muscles. So we must respect that, and we must move patiently through these ranges of motion. We want to be starting light, we want to be starting slow, and we need to be extremely clever and smart with our approach on how we progress these types of ranges of motion. Other common restrictions that I've seen working with all sorts of different clients from different ages, there's many restrictions, but if we were to look at each kind of major joint of the body, we can identify some patterns. So when we look at the feet and ankle, most people, and whether or not this is from wearing shoes or just not really strengthening their foot and ankle, they get extremely tight in the calves. That can also stem from the footwear you're wearing. If you spend a lot of time in a shoe that restricts your toes and has an elevated heel, it essentially is putting your calf in a shortened position. And with tight calves comes tight hamstrings. That was the biggest thing for me in helping me unlock more hamstring flexibility, was stretching out my damn calves. So I went from having most of my 20 years on this planet never been able to touch my toes. Never ever could I touch my toes. I remember that growing up, playing football. At the end of the football, you get told to do the one stretch where you spend 20 seconds in it and you try and reach down. And it was a common thing. None of us could touch our toes. And the first time I could touch my toes was at the age of 20 plus, which is kind of crazy. And now I'm doing kind of build the strength in these stretch positions. So tight calves and hamstrings is one of them. The other one that comes from lots of sitting is going to be tight hips. I think we're all aware of this one, but the reason why we get tight hips, and particularly the front of the hip, so front of the hip referring to quadriceps, hip flexor muscles. When we sit, our hips and quads are in a shortened position. And if we spend prolonged periods in a shortened position, then they become tight and they become weak. And when we talk about these muscle groups, these are big, long muscle groups that run around the pelvis and into the lower back. So many people that have lower back pain, it stems from tight quads and tight hips. When we go further up the chain, one of the things that we see a lot of is just a restricted and stiff spine. And this is probably one of the most important areas to address. If you are somebody that spends long periods of time driving, sitting at a desk, and you're not doing any other exercises to help counteract that, then you are going to have a more difficult life going forward. Okay? I don't want this to be all like a negative. This is coming from a very good place, but we should be moving our spines regularly and in all directions. With a stiff spine comes the ability to rotate the spine, also has a huge effect on how the shoulder feels. So restricted thoracic rotation and extension is going to place massive amounts of excess stress and strain through the shoulder. Okay, and one of the most common positions that we see is rounded shoulders, and that comes from spending long periods at a desk. And what that does is it tightens all of the front of the muscles, so front of the shoulder, the pecs, the biceps, and we get really weak in the muscles of our upper back. And these can be often referred to as our postural muscles. So our rear deltoids, traps, upper back, rotator cuff muscles. These are the muscles that allow us to kind of open up the shoulders. And many people have different opinions on posture and this, but most people have a weak upper back. And this also has an effect on the neck and all of the areas up the chain. So when we look at the modern human is not in a good way. And it's because we stopped doing all the things that we were designed to do. The best thing, if we have a look at what we should be doing, is to watch kids. They're crawling, they're swinging, they're squatting, they're on the floor. They get into all of these positions with ease. And we find those positions much easier when we're younger. And as soon as we stop doing the things that we did as kids, we lose that ability. My goal working in this space is to give clients the tools, the certain exercises that are going to help them find their starting point and guide them on the journey of improving their physical capabilities. I truly think that the best thing that every single human on this planet can do after the age of 30 is to fall in love with improving their physical capabilities. And that doesn't need to just be in the gym. Have something that you enjoy and that you want to work towards getting better at. It is the foundation for everything, and it does wonders for both physical health, mental health, and I believe that every single individual will have endless amounts of benefits, life-changing benefits, when they start the journey of improving their physical capabilities. If you've made it this far, thank you, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one.